Wade Coleman was 38 years old when the woman he loved told him he wasn't rich enough to marry her. He had just opened a ring box on the bench where they had their first date 3 years earlier. She looked at the ring, looked at him, and said it gently, as if gentleness changed what it was. Wade said nothing. He reached into his pocket, pulled out his phone, and typed a single word. 8 seconds later, the sound began. A low, rhythmic thrum above the tree line that grew until the entire park was looking up. A sleek, black and silver helicopter descended toward the open field 50 yards behind them, and beneath it, a banner slowly unfurled in the rotor wash. Paige read every word, then watched every word disappear. The helicopter landed, and the man she had just called unworthy buttoned his jacket, walked toward it without looking back, and stepped inside. What Paige did not yet understand, standing alone in that empty field, was exactly what she had just thrown away. Before we jump into the story, comment where in the world you are watching from and subscribe, because tomorrow's story is one you need to hear. The concrete mixer was already turning when Wade pulled up. 5:47 a.m. The sky over East Atlanta was the color of a bruise fading, dark purple at the edges, pale gray where the sun was starting to push through. Wade cut the engine on his F-150 and sat for a moment, thermos warm between his palms, watching his crew move across the site the way he always did before stepping out. Just watching, taking inventory. Marcus had the laser level set up along the East Foundation line. Deshaun and 2 of the younger guys were laying board forms in the trench, moving quick and clean. Nobody was standing around. Nobody needed to be told what came next. That was the thing about a good crew. They didn't need a show. Wade climbed out of the truck. His boots hit the gravel and Marcus looked up, gave a short nod. That was it. No salute, no performance. Just the nod that said, "You're here. We're good. Let's work." Wade walked the perimeter of the pour site with his coffee, checking the form boards, crouching once to press his thumb against the ground near a section that looked soft. He made a mental note. 2 minutes later, he mentioned it to Marcus in passing. "That southwest corner. Give it another look before we pour," and kept walking. "Yes, sir," Marcus said, already moving. Wade had been a project superintendent for 11 years. He wore the same scuffed Red Wings he'd worn for 3 of them. His jacket was a Carhartt with a small bleach stain on the left sleeve that he'd never bothered replacing. His truck was a 2019 F-150 with 94,000 miles on it and a crack in the passenger side mirror he kept meaning to fix. He looked exactly like what people assumed he was. That was the point. He had been 12 years old when he learned why. His grandfather, Earl Sr., had run a small appliance repair shop on Flat Shoals Avenue for 19 years. Built it from one folding table and a second-hand soldering iron into a real business. 8 employees, loyal customers, a name people trusted. By the time Wade was old enough to help sweep the floor after school, the shop was the kind of place where the phone rang steady and the lights stayed on. Then a lending company came in with a refinancing deal on the building. The paperwork was complicated. The terms were buried. Earl Sr. signed because the man across the desk had a kind face, and the monthly payment sounded manageable. 14 months later, the shop was gone. Wade remembered the night his grandfather sat at the kitchen table with all the papers spread out in front of him, not crying, past crying, just looking at the documents like he was trying to find the exact moment it had happened. They only took it because they could see it, Earl Sr. had said. He wasn't talking to anyone in particular. Maybe to himself. Maybe to God. Next time we build, boy. We build where nobody's looking. Wade had never forgotten that. He'd spent the 12 years since his 30th birthday building exactly that way. 2 commercial properties in Atlanta held under a quiet LLC. A portfolio of rental units managed through a separate property company. A silent stake in a regional logistics operation out of Macon. An investment account that his financial advisor still sometimes called to confirm was real. Total net worth, $4.2 million, give or take the market on any given Tuesday. Nobody on his crew knew. His neighbors didn't know. The woman at the front desk of his apartment complex thought he was a foreman who was good with his money. That was fine. That was the design. Paige had chosen the restaurant. She always chose the restaurant. This one was in Midtown, the kind of place where the menu didn't have prices, and the lighting was low enough that everyone looked like they were somewhere important. Wade didn't mind it. He'd eaten in nicer rooms and cheaper ones, and he'd learned that good food tasted the same either way. Paige looked beautiful. She always did. She was in a burgundy dress, her locks pinned up, laughing at something he said about Marcus and the level laser. And for a while it was easy. The kind of dinner that reminded him exactly why he was doing what he was planning to do on Sunday. But then it shifted. Subtle. The way weather shifts before you can name it. There was a couple 2 tables over. The man was in a charcoal suit, clearly custom. The kind that sits on the shoulders like it was born there. Paige glanced over once, then again. Not obviously. She was too polished for obvious. But Wade noticed. He noticed the way she turned the stem of her wine glass when she looked. Later, she brought up her co-worker Dana's new car, a BMW 5 Series. "Isn't that something?" she said, smiling. Dana. Wade smiled back. Good for Dana. When he talked about the future, just generally, carefully, Paige said, someday, in the easy, uncommitted way people say, "We'll see." He heard it. He filed it. He told himself it was nerves. That was what love did. It made optimists out of careful men. Back home, Wade sat at his kitchen table with the ring box in front of him. He opened it. The diamond caught the overhead light, 2.1 carats, cushion cut, set in platinum. He'd paid cash. No receipt. He'd driven 40 minutes to a jeweler he'd never used before, given his name as Mitchell, and carried it home in his jacket pocket, like a secret that deserved to be kept that way. Sunday, Piedmont Park. The bench where they'd sat on their first date, 3 years ago. He had already called the pilot. Already briefed his assistant and the 2 bodyguards who would be in position nearby. Dressed casual, at a distance, invisible unless needed. The helicopter would hold altitude until Wade sent a single text. Yes meant land with the banner. No meant roll it back first. He hadn't planned for no, but he planned for everything. He called Rod at 9:47 p.m. Rod picked up on the second ring. "You ready?" "Tomorrow, I'm ready," Wade said. "Sunday's the day." A pause. Not long, but Rod's pauses always meant something. "You sure about her, Wade?" Wade looked at the ring. He thought about Paige's laugh, the way she tucked her feet under her on his couch, the way she said his name when she was genuinely happy. "Yeah," he said. "I'm sure." Rod let it go. He said, "All right then, call me after." And that was that. Wade closed the ring box, set it on the nightstand, turned off the lamp. In the dark, he rehearsed the words he'd say on that bench. He'd been turning them over for 2 months, testing each one the way he tested a foundation, pressing on it, checking for soft spots, making sure it would hold. He was certain about her. He was only uncertain about the answer. He fell asleep that way, certain and uncertain at the same time. The ring box 3 inches from his head. Sunday already beginning somewhere just past the edge of the night. The October light came down through the trees at Piedmont Park, like something from a painting, golden and warm, the kind of afternoon that made Atlanta feel like it was showing off. The leaves had just started turning, amber and rust at the edges, and the air smelled like cut grass and wood smoke from somewhere distant. Wade had chosen this bench on purpose. It was the same one from 3 years ago. Same green paint, same slight lean to the left, same view of the skyline sitting low and patient above the tree line. He remembered that first afternoon, Paige laughing so hard at something he said that she spilled her lemonade, and neither of them caring. He had known then. He had been certain from almost the beginning. He was still certain now. He waited until the noise of the path had quieted around them. A jogger passed. 2 kids chased a dog across the grass. Then the park settled into that easy Sunday hush that made it feel like the rest of the city had stepped back to give them room. Wade took her hand. Paige turned toward him, smiling. Her locks were down today, one side tucked behind her ear. She was wearing the burnt orange jacket he'd always liked on her. She looked like the day. He reached into his jacket pocket with his free hand and brought out the ring box. Her smile changed. He opened it. The diamond caught the October sun and held it, a point of cold, clean light between them. He said the words he had tested and turned over for 2 months. Every one of them real. Every one of them earned. When he finished, there was a moment where the whole park seemed to go quiet, and Paige looked at the ring. Not at him. At the ring. The moment stretched out longer than it should have. Longer than joy needed. Something moved behind her eyes. Not emotion, not surprise. Something that looked, in the quiet part of Wade's gut, a lot like calculation. Then she said it. Wade. Her voice was soft. Gentle, even. The gentleness of someone who had decided that tone was the kindest way to deliver something unkind. I love you, but not yet. She paused. You're a good man, but you're not rich enough to marry me. I need security. Real security. She tilted her head slightly. You know what I mean. She said it the way someone states a fact about the weather. Regrettable, but simply true. Wade did not move. He sat very still, the way he sat when he was checking a foundation, pressing on something to find out how much it would hold. He looked at her face. He let himself see it clearly, maybe for the first time. The gentleness was real. The calculation underneath it was also real. Both things at once. He reached into his jacket pocket, not for the ring box. That was already closed in his other hand, his thumb resting on the lid. He pulled out his phone, opened the message thread with his pilot, typed one word, no, sent it, put the phone back in his pocket. 8 seconds passed. Then the sound started. It came from above the tree line to the north, a low, rhythmic thrum that built the way thunder builds, steady and certain, until the people on the path nearby were already stopping and tilting their heads upward. The helicopter came through the tree line in a long descending arc, black and silver, moving with the unhurried authority of something that answers to no one. And beneath it, trailing on 2 long guide cords, a white banner caught the rotor wash and snapped open like a flag. Will you marry me, Paige? The letters were big and bold and black. A woman on the path covered her mouth. Someone started to clap. A child somewhere behind them screamed, "Look! Look! Look!" and pointed straight up with both arms. Paige made a small sound. Not words, just sound. Wade turned and looked up toward the cockpit. One slow shake of his head. The banner moved, not forward, backward. The white fabric pulled back smoothly toward the helicopter's undercarriage, mechanically precise, the way a window shade rolls up when you let it go. Paige disappeared first. Then the question mark. Then the rest of the words, one by one, until the banner was gone entirely, and the helicopter was simply a helicopter, clean and quiet, dropping toward the open field 50 yards from their bench. The child was still pointing, now at nothing. The helicopter touched down. The rotor wash bent the grass in wide, flattening circles, rippling outward like a stone dropped in still water. The engine dropped to idle. The door opened. His personal assistant stepped out first, smoothing her jacket with one hand, crossing the field with the efficient stride of someone who had done exactly this before. She stopped at a respectful distance, hands clasped, expression professional and still. Whenever you're ready, Mr. Coleman. One of the bodyguards materialized from the field's edge, not rushing, not performing, and stepped to the helicopter door. He held it open with one hand and looked at Wade. "Sir." Wade stood. He looked down at the ring box in his hand, slipped it into his jacket pocket, buttoned the jacket, smoothed the front of it once. Then he looked at Paige, not with anger, not with grief, not with the satisfaction of a man making a point. He looked at her with the expression of a man who had just been shown something he'd hoped he was wrong about, and who had now confirmed it, and who was done hoping. "You're right," he said. "Not yet." He walked toward the helicopter. His assistant fell into step beside him. The bodyguard held the door. Wade stepped in without looking back. The door closed. The engine climbed back to full pitch. The helicopter lifted. It rose above the field, above the tree line, above Piedmont Park and the golden afternoon, and the bench that leaned slightly to the left. It banked south over the city and kept climbing until it was a shape against the sky, and then a smaller shape, and then nothing at all. The field was empty. The grass was still moving where the rotor wash had been, bending and swaying in circles that had no center anymore. Paige stood at the edge of the field. She did not move for a long time. Then she took out her phone. Her hand was not quite steady. She found June's name and pressed call. It rang twice. When June picked up, Paige opened her mouth. Her voice came out smaller than she intended. "I think I just made a very bad mistake." Rod Washington's office was on the 14th floor of a building in Midtown, with a view of the city that Wade had always privately appreciated and never once mentioned. The office was the way Rod himself was, clean, precise, nothing on the desk that didn't have a reason to be there. A framed photo of his mother near the window, a single yellow legal pad centered in front of his chair. Rod was already at his desk when Wade arrived at 8:45. No greeting beyond a look that took in Wade's face and understood everything it needed to understand. Rod had known Wade for over 20 years. He didn't need the story. He could see it in the set of Wade's jaw. Not broken, not shattered, just reset. The face of a man who had decided something in the night and had woken up, still decided. Rod opened the portfolio on his desk and turned it to face Wade. "Everything's here," Rod said. "All of it." Wade leaned forward and looked at the pages without touching them. Numbers he already knew by heart, but seeing them printed, organized, formal, felt different this morning. The 2 commercial properties, the rental units, the logistics stake, the investment accounts, his attorney's name on the cover page alongside his own. $4.2 million in verified assets, $890,000 in liquid holdings alone. Numbers that had lived in silence for 12 years. "I want it documented," Wade said. "All of it. Formal, current, dated." Rod nodded. "Protecting it? Defining it." Wade sat back. "There's a difference." Rod wrote something on the legal pad. "You thinking about a trust restructure?" "I'm thinking about being clear," Wade said. "About what I have, about who it's for, and about who it will never be for." Rod looked at him over the pad. He wrote something else. The scratch of the pen was the only sound in the office for a moment. "I should have pushed harder," Rod said. Not an apology. Rod didn't do apologies easily. A statement of fact, offered plainly. "You asked," Wade said. "I answered. That's on me." Still, Wade agreed. Rod flipped to a new page on the legal pad. He was about to speak when Wade's phone buzzed on the desk between them. Wade glanced at it the way you glance at something you don't expect to matter. It was a Venmo notification. He picked it up. Paige had charged their shared account, the small joint account they'd kept for groceries, utilities, the ordinary texture of a shared life. $32 here, $18 there. Small, practical, unremarkable. The charge was $340. The note read, T. Holt. Dinner. Wade looked at it for 2 seconds. Then he opened his browser and typed the name, Trevor Holt, Atlanta. The results came up immediately. A real estate development company, a website with a professional photo, and at the top of the image results, a public Instagram profile. Wade clicked it. The most recent post was from 11 days ago. A restaurant photo, low lighting, white tablecloths, the warm amber glow of good candles. Wade recognized the room. He recognized the walls, the particular shape of the light fixtures, the color of the booth upholstery. He and Paige had eaten at that restaurant for their anniversary last spring. He scrolled the photo wider. In the background, not the subject of the shot, slightly out of focus, visible in the space between Trevor Holt's shoulder and the edge of the frame, was a woman at a table, locks down, one side tucked behind her ear, head tilted back in a laugh, hand resting on the arm of the man across from her. Wade knew that laugh. He had been the reason for it 100 times. He checked the post date, October 3rd. He opened his text thread with Paige, scrolled back, October 3rd. At June's for dinner, home late, don't wait up. Love you. Wade set the phone down on Rod's desk. Face up, the photo still on the screen. Rod looked at it. He said nothing for a moment. His jaw tightened once, then settled. Wade folded his hands on the desk. He looked at the financial portfolio, at his name on the cover page, at 12 years of careful, quiet work spread across Rod's clean desk in black and white. I'm going to need you to set a few things in motion, he said. His voice was even. Not hard, not sharp, just clear. The voice of a man who had already moved past the part that hurt and arrived at the part that required precision. Rod picked up the legal pad. He clicked his pen. Tell me, Rod said. Wade drove home on autopilot, both hands on the wheel of the F-150, the city sliding past his windows in the flat gray light of a Monday morning. He turned onto the boulevard where Paige's apartment building sat on the corner. Brick, 6 stories, the small balcony on the 4th floor, where she kept a potted fern she was always almost letting die. He did not stop. He did not slow down. He kept driving and let his grandfather's words come back to him the way they always did when he needed them most. Not as a memory, but as something closer to a compass. Build where nobody's looking. He had been building for 12 years. Paige called 4 times on Monday. Wade let all 4 go to voicemail. On Tuesday morning, he sent a single text. I need some space to think. She responded in under a minute. Of course. Take all the time you need. I'm here. Then, 30 seconds later, I love you. Wade read both messages, set his phone face down on the kitchen table, and picked up a legal pad. He worked at the kitchen table every evening that week after his job site shifts ended. No laptop, no phone notes, just the yellow pad and a black pen and the particular silence of a house where only one person lives. He started at the beginning, 3 years ago. Their first conversation, a mutual friend's cookout in Grant Park. The way she had laughed at something he said and touched his arm. The bench at Piedmont Park. Their first real date. The afternoon that turned into evening without either of them trying to stop it. He wrote it all down. Then he went through the other side. The dinner where she had gone quiet when he mentioned he drove a Ford. The time she had introduced him to her co-worker as her friend Wade before correcting herself. The vacation she had wanted to take to Portugal. The one she had looked up flights for, then gone quiet about when she calculated what the hotels would run. The birthday when she had said, lightly, like it was nothing, I just want us to be in a better place by next year, you know? He wrote all of that down too. By Thursday, he had 3 pages filled on both sides, and the picture they made was not complicated. He had known this woman completely, and she had kept one eye on the door the entire time. Not because he had done anything wrong, because he had looked, from the outside, like a man who had stopped moving. He put the pad in the kitchen drawer and left it there. Rod called Thursday afternoon with Bet's findings on Trevor Holt. Wade was in his truck in the job site parking lot, eating a sandwich, when the call came through. He put it on speaker and set it on the dash. "Talk to me," Wade said. Rod's voice was dry and unhurried. "Trevor Alden Holt, 39, CEO and sole member of Holt Capital Development LLC, registered in Georgia, 3 years old. Website looks good. LinkedIn's impressive." A pause. The particular pause Rod used when he was about to get to the real part. Companies carrying debt on 2 commercial loans, both past due by 60-plus days. There's a contractor lawsuit filed 6 weeks ago. Subcontractor on a mixed-use project in Smyrna says Holt stiffed them on $87,000 in materials and labor. And Bet found a UCC filing from a private lender that suggests he's pledged his personal vehicle as collateral for a bridge loan he pulled in March. Wade chewed his sandwich, looked out the windshield at the workers moving across the site. "So the money's not there," Wade said. "The money," Rod said, "is a photograph of money. The man is dressed like a real estate developer and running about 40 cents to the dollar." Wade nodded once, though Rod couldn't see it. "Add it to the folder," Wade said. "Already there." He sat in the truck a little while after the call ended. Not angry, not satisfied. Something quieter than either. The particular stillness that comes when a thing you suspected becomes a thing you know. Paige had looked at a man worth $4.2 million and called him unworthy. Then she had turned around and positioned herself toward a man performing wealth on borrowed time. Wade finished his sandwich and went back to work. He drove out to Dottie's house in Collier Heights on Friday afternoon. Her house was a small yellow Craftsman with a front porch that had held the same 2 rocking chairs since Wade was 8 years old. The faint smell of brown sugar and butter hit him at the door. Sweet potato pie. She had made it without him asking, which meant she had already known he was coming the way she always knew. Not from any phone call, but from the particular frequency she had been tuned to for 38 years. They sat at her kitchen table the same way they had always sat. Her with her coffee, him with the pie she had cut without asking if he wanted any. He told her most of it. Not every detail, but enough. She listened the way she always listened, without interrupting, without rushing to fill the quiet, her eyes steady on his face. When he finished, she was quiet for a moment. "You got your grandfather's hands," she said. "But you got better sense than he did." She wrapped both of her small hands around her mug. He built things, and he wanted people to see them. Couldn't help himself. Wanted the recognition. She looked at Wade. "You built things and kept them quiet. That's not the same man. That's what he was trying to make." Wade looked down at the pie. "I kept it too quiet," he said. "Maybe," Dottie said. "Or maybe you just hadn't found the right reason to be loud yet." He called Paige that evening, just after 7. She picked up on the second ring. "Wade!" Her voice was careful, and warm at the same time, the voice of someone who had been rehearsing. "Hey," he said, "I've been thinking." "I have too," she said quickly. "So much." "I want to talk," he said. "In person." "You free Friday?" "Yes." No hesitation. "Absolutely, yes." "Good," he said. "I'll make a reservation." After he hung up, he sat in his living room in the quiet of his house and thought about everything in its right place. The legal pad in the kitchen drawer. Betta's findings in Rod's folder. 3 years of a relationship mapped out on both sides of 3 pages of yellow paper. She had said yes, without thinking. She didn't know she had just walked into the first room of a house Wade had already built around her. Paige was already at the table when Wade arrived. She had dressed carefully. A deep burgundy wrap dress, small gold earrings, her hair down the way he had always liked it. She smiled when she saw him, wide, warm, a little too quick, and stood to hug him before he had even pulled out his chair. "You look good," she said. "So do you," Wade said. And she did. That was never the problem. The restaurant was a quiet Italian place in Inman Park. Soft lighting, linen napkins, the kind of place where the noise stayed low enough that you could hear the person across from you without leaning in. Wade ordered the branzino. Paige ordered pasta she barely touched. She was attentive in the specific way of someone with something to manage. She laughed at the right moments. She asked about his job site, about Dottie, about Rod's new office space downtown. She touched his hand twice across the table. Once when she was making a point, once for no reason at all, which was the more calculated of the two. Wade was gracious. He was warm. He asked her about her new campaign at work, and listened while she described it, and said the right things at the right times. He gave her nothing to read in his face, because there was nothing there for her to find. He had learned a long time ago that the face was just another surface to manage. Over dessert, tiramisu she had suggested, and he had agreed to, she got to it. "I've been thinking about what I said," she started. She turned her water glass slowly with 2 fingers. "At the park." Wade waited. "I said it wrong." She looked up at him. Her eyes were steady and sorry and working hard. "What I meant, what I was trying to say, is that I needed more clarity about our future, where we're going, what we're building. I got scared and it came out all wrong, and I know how it sounded." Wade nodded slowly. "I hear you," he said. "I love you, Wade. That was never the question." "I know," he said. He let the silence sit there for a moment, comfortable and uncomplicated on his end. She filled it by reaching across the table again. "Can we just start over?" she said. "From a better place? Let's talk about it," he said. "I'm not going anywhere tonight." She exhaled slowly. The relief on her face was real. That was the thing about Paige. The relief was always real, even when everything around it wasn't. He walked her to her car after. It was parked half a block down on a quiet side street, and the October night had gone cool, and she held his arm as they walked the way she used to when things were easy between them. At her car, she turned and hugged him, both arms around him, her face against his shoulder. He put his arms around her back, and there it was, faint, expensive, a warm cedar and smoke cologne that sat just underneath the smell of her perfume. He had first noticed it 3 weeks ago, not in person. In the comments of Trevor Holt's most recent Instagram post, where a woman had written, "What are you wearing?" and Trevor had tagged the brand in his response. Wade had made a note of it, the same afternoon he had found Paige blurred in the background of that photo. He held the hug for exactly as long as it should have lasted. Then he stepped back and said, "I'll call you this week." She smiled. "Okay." She touched his face once with her fingertips. "Thank you for dinner." He watched her drive away. Then he walked back to his truck and drove home. June Ibarra called on Monday morning at 9:17. Wade was on the job site when his phone buzzed. He stepped away from the crew and answered. "June," he said. "Hey." Her voice was tight, compressed. The voice of someone who had been arguing with themselves for a long time, and had finally stopped. "I need to tell you something. And then I need you to forget I told you." Wade walked to the far edge of the site, away from the equipment noise. "All right," he said. June was quiet for 3 seconds. Then, "Paige has been seeing someone. Trevor Holt. For 7 months." Wade said nothing. "It started emotional," June said. "By month 3, it wasn't." Another pause. "She told me 2 weeks ago she was keeping things going with you because you were steady. While she figured out the Trevor situation, June's voice had gone smaller. She called you safe but small, Wade. Those were her exact words. Safe but small." The job site noise continued behind him. The grind of equipment, men calling to each other, the ordinary sounds of things being built. Wade stood very still. "I'm sorry," June said. I'm sorry." "You did the right thing," Wade said. "I mean that." After he hung up, he walked to his truck, got in, and closed the door. He sat there for 15 minutes. He let it land. All of it. The 7 months. The word small. The way she had touched his face in the parking lot 3 nights ago. He did not push any of it away. He let himself feel the full weight of it, privately, quietly, completely, the way a man feels something he is only going to feel once. Then he started the engine. He picked up his phone and called Rod. Rod had the legal pad ready before Wade sat down. That was the thing about Rod Washington. He did not need to be told twice. He did not need to be told at all, most of the time. He read Wade the way very few people could. Not by what Wade said, but by the particular quality of his silence. And the silence on the phone the night before had told Rod everything he needed to know. Wade settled into the chair across from the desk. Rod looked at him once, directly, and then clicked his pen. "Talk to me," Rod said. Wade told him. All of it. June's call. The 7 months. The word Paige had used. Rod wrote nothing down during this part. He just listened, his pen resting against the pad, his face doing the thing it always did when he was absorbing something serious, going very still, like a man standing in a doorway, deciding whether to step through. When Wade finished, Rod was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "What do you need?" "Close the shared account," Wade said. Quietly. No noise. Rod wrote that down. "And I want a formal fraud case built around the Venmo charge. Everything documented. Receipts, screenshots, timestamps, the whole picture." Rod nodded and wrote, "I'll have Bet pull the full account history going back to when you opened it. Should have something to you by end of week." "Sooner if you can," Wade said. Rod looked up. "I'll have her start this morning." Betty was faster than that. By Wednesday afternoon, Rod called Wade and asked him to come in. His voice had the flat, careful tone he used when something was worse than expected. Wade was at the office by 4 o'clock. Rod did not sit down. He stood behind his desk, both hands resting on a manila folder, and looked at Wade with the expression of a man who has found something he genuinely wishes he had not found. "Betty pulled the full credit picture," Rod said. "Not just the shared account." He opened the folder and turned it around so Wade could read it. There was a certified account statement on top. A credit card account. Wade's name. An authorized user listed below his. Paige Okafor. The account opened 18 months ago. Wade looked at it without touching it. "She slipped the authorized user application into a stack of papers you signed at her apartment," Rod said. "Bet had tracked the originating documents. Paige described them to you at the time as insurance forms." Rod's voice stayed even and professional, the way it did when he was working hard to keep his personal feelings out of the room. "You signed. She filed." The account opened 11 days later. Wade turned to the next page. 14 months of charges. All small. Groceries, pharmacy runs, gas, a spa charge here, a salon charge there. Nothing that would raise a flag on its own. Nothing that would make a man look twice. The total at the bottom of the page, $12,400. Wade turned to the next page. Rod said, "Third item down, February of this year." Wade found it. A jewelry store. A charge of $610. And then, 4 lines below it, the same jewelry store again. $720. And once more, 6 weeks after that, $470. 3 separate charges. $1,800 total. Wade knew the store. He had seen it tagged in a Trevor Holt Instagram post 4 months ago. A photo of a watch laid out on a velvet tray, the caption reading, "Treating yourself is a discipline." The jewelry store's handle tagged in the corner. She had used his credit to buy Trevor Holt a gift. Possibly more than one. Rod placed a second document beside the statement. A fraud affidavit, already prepared, waiting for Wade's signature. Bet's work. Clean, thorough, every charge cross-referenced and annotated. Rod said nothing. He did not need to. Wade looked at the statement for a long time. The columns of numbers, the dates. The jewelry store, 3 times. He read it the way a builder reads a damaged foundation. Not with surprise, but with the cold, clear eye of someone calculating what it will take to correct it. Then he said, "Add it to the folder." Rod picked up both documents and slid them into the growing file on the corner of his desk. He closed it, set his pen down. "You want to talk about next steps?" Rod asked. "Yes," Wade said, "but not the legal ones. Not yet." He leaned back in his chair. "My grandmother's birthday is in 6 weeks." Rod waited. The family was planning a church hall dinner. Wade paused. "I'm going to upgrade it." He made the calls himself that evening, a private event space in Buckhead, one he had used twice before for business functions and trusted completely. Catered dinner, full service, a live jazz quartet for the back half of the night. He paid the deposit from his personal account and asked the venue coordinator to direct all communications through his assistant going forward. Then he called his father. Earl picked up on the second ring. Wade kept it simple. He told him the dinner was moving to a nicer venue, that the family deserved something better for Dottie's 75th, and that he needed Earl to handle the invitations without mentioning who had arranged the upgrade. Earl was quiet for a moment. "You want me to invite Paige?" "Yes," Wade said. Another pause. Earl did not ask why. That was not his way. "All right, son," he said. "Consider it done." He drove to the cemetery at dusk. His grandfather's headstone was simple granite, smooth-faced and dark. Earl Coleman Sr. carved into it in plain block letters with his years beneath. The grass around it was neatly kept. The light had gone low and orange, and the old oaks along the cemetery's edge threw long shadows across the rows. Wade stood in front of it, with his hands at his sides. He did not speak out loud. He just stood there in the fading light and breathed, and let the quiet of the place settle around him the way it always did. His grandfather had built something once and lost it, not because he was weak, not because he wasn't smart, but because someone had looked at what he had and decided they could take it. Wade had spent 12 years making sure that would never happen to him. He was not angry, standing there. He was not sad. He was something steadier than both. After a while, he straightened his jacket. He walked back to his truck. The folder was thick. Wade picked it up when he sat down, tested the weight of it in his hand, then set it back on Rod's desk. Rod had paper-clipped each section separately: the credit fraud documentation, the certified account statements, the fraud affidavit, the property reclassification paperwork. The timeline Bet had assembled cross-referencing dates, charges, and Trevor Holt's social media posts. 12 years of quiet, invisible building. 6 weeks of equally quiet dismantling. All of it reduced to a stack of paper 2 inches deep. "Everything certified?" Wade asked. "Every page," Rod said. "Notarized where it needed to be. The fraud affidavit is ready to file the moment you give me the word." Wade nodded. "Not yet." "I know." Rod slid the top section across the desk. "The property reclassification is done. Both commercial properties, East Atlanta and the Ponce Corridor, are now in your personal name. Pulled them out of the holding LLC Monday morning. Legitimate restructuring. Cleaner tax position going forward." He paused. "Side effect is that your name is now searchable in the public property records. Anyone who looks will find it." Wade considered that. For 12 years, his name had not appeared in those records. For 12 years, the properties had existed behind the quiet wall of the LLC, untraceable to the man who drove a 2019 F-150 and carried a lunch pail to work. He had built it that way deliberately, patiently, the same way his grandfather had taught him without ever meaning to, by losing everything in plain sight. "Good," Wade said. Rod capped his pen and leaned back in his chair. "How are you feeling?" "Steady," Wade said. Rod looked at him for a moment. Then he nodded, because that was the right answer, and he knew it. He told his father everything that evening. They sat at Earl's kitchen table, the same table Wade had grown up eating breakfast at, scarred along one edge from 30 years of use. And Wade talked, and Earl listened. The proposal. Page's words on the bench. The helicopter, the banner rolling back up, the Venmo charge, Trevor Holt's Instagram, June's call, 7 months, safe but small, the credit account, the jewelry store, 3 times. Earl did not speak once during any of it. He sat with his hands flat on the table and his eyes on his son, and he listened the way men like Earl Coleman listen, with his whole body, absorbing it, not rushing ahead to his response before the words were finished. When Wade was done, Earl was quiet for a moment. The refrigerator hummed. Outside, a neighbor's dog barked twice and went silent. "What do you need from me?" Earl said. Wade told him. Earl listened to that too. Then he nodded, slow and certain, the way he had nodded at every hard thing in his life that he had already decided to carry. "I can do that," he said. He reached across the table and put one large, calloused hand briefly on top of Wade's, just for a moment. Then he pulled it back and picked up his coffee cup like the matter was settled. Because for Earl Coleman, it was. Dottie already knew most of it. That was clear from the moment Wade sat down across from her in her living room, the way she looked at him, patient and unhurried, like a woman who had been waiting for someone to catch up to what she had seen months ago. He told her the rest. She did not gasp. She did not press her hand to her mouth. She sat with her hands folded in her lap and listened with the composure of someone who had already done the emotional work long before the facts arrived to confirm it. When he finished, she was quiet for a moment. Then she reached over and patted his hand. "Let her come to the party," Dottie said. "Let her see." She said it gently, but her eyes were calm in a way that had nothing gentle about it. It was the calm of a woman who had watched a long time and was ready to watch the last act. His assistant's name was Camille, and she had worked for Wade for 4 years without ever once letting the gap between his public life and his private one register on her face. She was 29, precise, and constitutionally unflappable. The 2 bodyguards, Marcus and Dion, had been with him for 3 years. They were professionals in the truest sense of the word, men who understood that discretion was not a policy, but a standard. Wade met with all 3 of them together, which he rarely did. He thanked them for their silence at Piedmont Park. He said it simply and meant it. Camille looked at him steadily. "Of course, Mr. Coleman. What do you need for the party?" He told them. Camille made notes. Marcus and Dion listened without expression, asking 2 logistical questions between them and nothing more. When the meeting was done, they dispersed without fanfare. That same evening, his phone buzzed on the kitchen counter. A photo. Page. Address. Deep burgundy. Elegant. The text beneath it read, "Can't wait to celebrate Dottie. She's such a special woman." Wade read it. He set the phone face down on the counter without responding and finished washing his dinner plate. He picked the phone back up. Typed, "She is. See you there." Sent it. Marcus completed the venue walk-through at 9:15 that Friday evening. He moved through the Buckhead event space methodically, checked the entrance, the side corridor, the service exit at the rear, the sightlines from the bar to the main dining floor. He spoke briefly with the venue's event coordinator, who confirmed the staff assignments for the night. He checked the placement of the tables against the floor plan Camille had submitted. He tested the lighting panels near the private corner where the bar met the far wall. When he came back outside, Camille was waiting by the car with her phone and a small notebook. Marcus looked at her. "Ready," he said. The venue was not what Paige expected. She stopped in the doorway, actually stopped, one hand still on the door handle, and let her eyes move across the room. White linen tablecloths, candles in low glass holders, casting warm gold light across every surface, a jazz trio in the far corner working through something slow and elegant, the upright bass moving like a heartbeat under the melody, round tables dressed with flowers, place cards, real stemware, a room full of the Coleman family in their finest, Uncles in blazers, aunties in colors, cousins she'd met once or twice now seated and assembled like people who had somewhere to be and had always known it. This was not a church hall dinner. She smoothed the front of her burgundy dress and stepped inside. A woman near the entrance handed her a champagne flute with a smile. Paige took it. She looked around the room slowly, the way a person looks when they are trying to make sense of a place they thought they understood. She had been here before. In the general sense, in the Coleman family gathering sense, she knew these people well enough to hug them hello and ask about their children. But the room had never looked like this before. The room had never felt like this. She found a spot near the edge of the space and stood with her champagne and waited. She heard him before she saw him, not his voice. The door, the particular way it opened, held from outside. Then the bodyguard's voice, clear and unhurried. "Mr. Coleman." Wade stepped through the entrance in a dark navy suit she had never seen before. It fit him the way suits fit men who have them made rather than bought. He moved without rushing, without scanning the room the way people do when they're uncertain. And behind him, a half step back on each side, came Marcus and Dayon, not crowding him, just present in the particular way that professionals are present around a person of consequence. Camille appeared at his left elbow, a slim leather portfolio tucked under one arm. She leaned close as they crossed the threshold. "Mr. Washington is at table 3, sir. Your father is already seated." Wade nodded once. "Thank you." They moved into the room together. Paige's champagne glass went very still in her hand. She watched him greet people. He moved easily, stopping to embrace an aunt, bending down to shake a young cousin's hand like the boy was a full-grown man, laughing at something an older uncle said, with a laugh that was real and unhurried. He was warm. He had always been warm, but there was something different about it tonight, something she was only now beginning to locate. He was not hiding anything. That was it. That was the thing that was different. She had known Wade for 3 years and had never seen him standing in a room the way he was standing in this room. Not because he was performing, but because he was no longer pulling anything back. He was simply present, in the full dimension of who he was, and the room received him accordingly. She had mistaken his stillness for smallness. She understood that now, standing at the edge of the room with a champagne glass she had not sipped from. Dinner unfolded with a warmth that made Paige feel increasingly like a tourist. Wade introduced her to 2 couples near their table. "This is Paige. She works in marketing," and moved smoothly on. Not unkind, not pointed, just accurate. She shook hands and smiled and said the right things, and the entire time one part of her mind was cataloging what he had not said. "Not my girlfriend. Not my partner. Not the woman I've been with for 3 years. She works in marketing." Midway through the first course, Camille appeared at Wade's shoulder. "Sir, your 2 o'clock Monday has been moved to 3. Mr. Park confirmed." Wade said, "Fine," without looking up from his conversation, and Camille withdrew. 10 minutes later, Marcus materialized at the edge of the table, waited for a pause, and said quietly, "All good, Mr. Coleman." Wade gave a small nod, and Marcus stepped back. None of it was for her. That was the thing she kept returning to. None of it was staged or directed at her in any way. It was simply his life, its actual texture, its actual dimension, made briefly visible, and she could not stop watching it. Earl stood during dinner and raised his glass toward Dottie, and the room quieted the way rooms do when a man with real weight in his voice begins to speak. He talked about his wife. He was funny and specific and tender, and the room laughed and then went soft at the right moments. And Dottie sat at the head of the table with her hands folded and her chin lifted, and the expression of a woman who had earned every word of it. Then Earl turned toward his son. "I want to say something about this man right here," he said. The room shifted its attention. Paige set down her fork. Earl's voice did not change in volume, but it settled into a different register. Something deliberate. Something that had been prepared. He talked about Wade the way a man talks when he has watched someone build a thing from nothing over a long time and finally has permission to say it out loud. He named the commercial property in East Atlanta. He named the Ponce Corridor building. He mentioned the logistics company's stake. Not the dollar amount, just its existence, just the fact of it. And said 12 years in a way that made the number feel like its full weight. He said Wade had built quietly and with discipline and without asking anyone to see it. Then he raised his glass. To a man who knows his worth, Earl said, even when someone tries to tell him otherwise. The room lifted their glasses. There was warmth in it, and laughter, and the clink of crystal. And somewhere in the back an uncle said, "That's right, the way men do when they mean it." Paige held her glass above the table. She did not drink. She set it back down without bringing it to her lips, and her hand, when she placed it in her lap, was not entirely steady. She found him at the bar after the plates were cleared. "Can we talk?" she said. "Just for a minute." Wade looked at her for a moment. Then he said, "Sure." He said it the way he said most things. Calm, without texture she could read. He walked her to the far corner of the room, where the bar met the wall, and the nearest table was far enough away for privacy. Camille saw them go and took one practiced step back, turning her attention to her phone. Marcus shifted his position without appearing to. Paige began to speak. She started with something soft, that the party was beautiful, that Dottie deserved every bit of it. And Wade waited, because he knew this was not what she had come to say. She got to it. She had made a mistake, she said. She had been scared. She hadn't understood what they had. She wanted to start over. Wade listened, all the way through. He did not interrupt. When she finished, he reached into the inside pocket of his jacket. He took out a single folded sheet of paper and placed it on the high-top table between them. He smoothed it flat with 2 fingers and stepped back. It was a printed summary, clean, precise, formatted. Account number. Dates. A column of charges. 14 months of them, each one small, most of them unremarkable. And near the bottom, separated by a thin line, 3 charges to a jewelry store, totaling $1,900. The account holder's name at the top of the page was Wade Coleman. He watched her read it. Paige read it twice. The first time fast, her eyes moving in short, sharp jumps across the page. The second time slow, like she was hoping the numbers would change if she looked at them long enough. They didn't. She looked up. Wade was already watching her. He had not moved. His hands were loose at his sides, his expression steady and unreadable in the particular way it always was when he had already made a decision and was simply waiting for the world to catch up to it. The party continued behind them. Laughter. The low, easy swing of the jazz quartet. Someone's aunt calling across a table. All of it warm and distant, like sound coming through a closed door. Paige set the paper down. "Wade, Trevor Holt," he said. Not loud, not hard, just a name placed on the table between them like the document still lying flat beneath her fingers. 7 months, he said. Physical by month 3. You told June you were keeping me around because I was steady while you figured out whether Trevor was worth the move. He paused. Her words were yours. Safe, but small. Paige opened her mouth. He kept going. That account has your handwriting on the application. 14 months of charges. Small enough not to trip anything, smart enough to look like noise. He glanced at the paper. The 3 at the bottom aren't noise. A jewelry store. Same one tagged in a post Trevor made 4 months ago. He looked back at her. You used my name to buy that man a gift. She said nothing. The ring I put back in my pocket at Piedmont Park, Wade said, cost more than the car you drove here tonight. The sentence landed and sat there. That's not why I'm done with you. Paige found her voice. I can explain the account. That wasn't. You're misreading what those charges. I'm not misreading anything. His tone didn't shift. Rod's paralegal pulled every statement going back 18 months. The fraud affidavit is already filed. She changed direction. Trevor was a mistake. It was already ending. I was going to… Paige. One word. She stopped. You told your best friend 2 weeks ago that you were keeping me around while you figured him out. He let that breathe for a moment. That's not a mistake you were ending. That's a plan you were running. She looked at him, really looked at him, and for just a second, something cracked open in her expression. Not guilt. Not quite. Something closer to the specific fear of a person who has just realized they have been outmaneuvered by someone they never thought to take seriously. Then she reached for the last thing she had. You lied to me, too. Her voice steadied. You hid everything. For 3 years, you let me believe I didn't lie to you. Simple, flat, final. I just didn't tell you everything. He reached out and picked up the document from the table, folded it once, and slid it back into his jacket pocket. My grandfather watched people take from him because he let them see what he had. I built differently. I built quiet. He looked at her. That's not a lie. That's the right of every person who's ever watched someone get taken from. He buttoned the top button of his jacket. You didn't earn all of me, Paige. You spent 3 years deciding whether I cleared the bar, and you did it while sitting at a table I was paying for and sleeping in a bed I had made for you. He paused. You looked at what I gave you freely and called it a limitation. Her eyes were bright now. She didn't speak. Rod has already filed with the credit bureau, he said. The demand letter is at your apartment. You'll see it tonight. He said it without heat, the way a man delivers information that is simply true. I'm not pressing charges, not because what you did doesn't qualify, but because I don't need it. The record is enough. The folder is enough. He looked at her one last time. I'm a builder, not a destroyer. But I protect what's mine. A shape appeared at the edge of his peripheral vision. Unhurried. Professional. Marcus, moving into position a half-step behind his right shoulder, hands clasped in front, chin level. Ready when you are, Mr. Coleman. Wade looked at Paige for one more second. Not with anger, not with grief. With the clear, settled expression of a man who has finished something he started and feels the particular quiet that comes after. He straightened his jacket. I'm ready, he said. He turned and walked back into the warmth of the room, back toward the laughter, the music, the clink of glasses, the Coleman family assembled in the full, earned joy of his grandmother's 75th birthday. And he did not look back. Paige walked out of the venue alone. The Buckhead parking deck was dim and cool, and the sound of the party disappeared the moment the stairwell door closed behind her. She found her car. She got in. She pulled the door shut. Her phone buzzed in her purse. She took it out. The notification was from Trevor. A text, 3 lines long. He was sorry, he said. He needed to focus on the business right now. Things had gotten complicated. There was a piece in the Atlanta Business Chronicle that she might see, and he wanted her to hear it from him first. He'd be in touch when things settled down. He would not be in touch. Paige sat in the dark of the parking deck, with her phone in both hands and the text on the screen and the demand letter waiting at her apartment, and the sound of absolutely nothing where 2 futures used to be. She did not start the engine. The truck was newer, not flashy. A 2023 F-150, dark blue, clean but not loud about it. He parked it in the same spot he always had, right of Dottie's driveway, up against the old oak that dropped acorns on the hood every fall. He sat for a second with the engine off, looking at the back of her house through the windshield. The gutters needed a look. He made a mental note. He let himself in through the back door. I'm here, he called. I know, Dottie called back from the living room. I heard that new truck. Too quiet. I don't trust it. Wade smiled and set his coffee on the counter. 12 months. Paige was still in Atlanta. A smaller apartment now. She'd moved after her lease was up. The same month, the freelance work finally steadied enough to cover the difference. The regional marketing director position had ended in a restructuring 6 months after Dottie's party. The official reason was a departmental consolidation. The real reason lived in the quieter language of professional reputation, the kind that spreads not through announcements but through pauses, through the way people answer when a reference call comes in, through the particular hesitation before someone says she's very talented. Trevor Holt's company collapsed 8 months ago. His contractor lawsuit went to judgment. His 2 primary investors pulled out within a week of each other. The LLC filed for dissolution in February. By March, Trevor was in Houston, starting something new with a new version of the same story, because that was the only story he knew how to tell. He did not take Paige with him. He did not ask. The fraud repayment agreement took 8 months to negotiate and settle. 8 months of installments, of Rod's letterhead arriving in her mailbox, of a credit report that now carried a shadow it would carry for years. She had paid it. Every cent. Not because she wanted to. Because the alternative was the kind of visibility she could not afford. She had not been to Piedmont Park. Wade found the hinge on Dottie's back door right where she'd said it was. Stiff, the lower pin worn down, the door dragging a 1/4 inch across the threshold every time it opened. He pulled his kit from his jacket pocket. Small flathead, replacement pin, a half-thumb of lithium grease. He worked without hurrying, crouching at the base of the door frame, while the Sunday morning came through the kitchen window in long, warm slabs of light. The East Atlanta commercial property had closed in March. Final sale price came in at $1.1 million over his original acquisition cost. He reinvested half inside of 60 days, a mixed-use building in the West End that Rod said was undervalued, and Wade already knew was. A portion went out quietly the same week, a wire transfer to the Ironworkers Union his father Earl had belonged to for 30 years. No name attached to it, no announcement. Just money that showed up where it was needed, from a source the union treasurer listed in the ledger only as anonymous donor. Earl knew. He didn't say anything about it. But the next Sunday dinner, he'd put his hand on Wade's shoulder for just a moment when he walked past, and that was enough. The Craftsman home in Decatur was done. Wade had spent most of the summer on it, refinished the hardwood floors himself, reframed 2 doorways, rebuilt the back porch from the joists up. His hands had remembered what they knew. The house was quiet and solid, and entirely his, on a street with old trees and neighbors who waved but didn't pry. He had moved in on a Thursday in August, and sat on the back porch that first night with a glass of water, and felt, for the first time in a long time, that the space around him matched the space inside him. His personal assistant now managed 2 additional staff members. His bodyguards ran on a formal rotation, scheduled out 6 weeks at a time. None of them, not one, in 12 months, had said a word about Piedmont Park to anyone outside their circle. A journalist doing a profile on Atlanta's emerging real estate figures had asked her once in passing how Wade's team stayed so tight. She had thought about it for exactly 1 second. "Mr. Coleman sets the standard," she said. "That's all." That was all. The hinge gave way cleanly. Wade pressed the new pin home, worked the grease in with his thumb, and stood up slowly. He swung the door twice. It moved without a sound. From the living room, without looking up from her word puzzle, Dottie said, "You happy, baby?" Wade tested the door 1 more time. Let it close all the way. Listened to the soft, solid click of the latch finding its seat. "Getting there," he said. Dottie made a small, satisfied sound, the kind that didn't need a word attached to it. "Good," she said. "That's the whole point." The industry dinner that evening was small. 12 people at a long table in a private room off Peachtree. Regional developers, 2 contractors, a commercial lender, and a structural engineer named Adaiz, who had arrived 5 minutes early and was already reading something on her phone when Wade walked in. She was direct in the way of people who have never needed to soften themselves for a room. When the conversation went sideways into the kind of performance that happens when professionals are also auditioning, names dropped, deals inflated, the quiet competition of men who mistake volume for credibility. She did not perform with them. She listened. She asked one precise question that made two of the men recalibrate. Then she went back to being still. Near the end of the meal, one of the contractors, the louder one, the one with the watch, turned to her and asked, the way men sometimes do when they are also asking something else entirely, "What do you even look for in a partner these days?" Adaizi didn't hesitate. "Someone who knows who they are," she said, "without needing to show you." She wasn't looking at Wade when she said it. Wade looked down at his water glass. The ice had melted down to small, clear slivers. He watched them float for a second. He smiled. He did not say anything yet. He had always been good at knowing when to move. Some men announce themselves. Wade Coleman had always preferred to let the helicopter do it. I hope you enjoyed that one. Be sure to like the video and subscribe so you don't miss the next story. I've picked out 2 more for you that I think you'll really like.